So anyway, thanks again, Angel, for joining me. I'm super excited about this for a couple reasons. Number one, um, I just probably a month and a half ago or so ended season one of the Make Work Better leadership interview series. And what's happened now is that I'm kicking off a new season of it with a little bit different of a focus. The one thing I will say that all of the previous guests had in common, for the most part, I think, were that all of them were published authors. And of course, we're kicking off season two with someone who is a published author. And I'm super excited to be talking about some of the books that you've written and published and unpack some of the lessons from those. But just if you want to just kind of give me sort of a high level, like here's where you are at this moment in time, here's what you're doing, and here's kind of what you're known for right now.
Well, right now I'm in the midst of starting a new company I'm very excited about. I've taken 20 plus years of experience and I've helped a lot of other people, a lot of companies become very successful. And now I'm doing it myself with another co-founder of mine. And we're just super excited because we get to do it the way we know what's best for the people because we were those people. And I'm just excited. I wish I don't know technology. I'm not a coder or those developer kind of people. So I wish I could speed that process up. But I'm just excited about where we're going, where we're headed, the plans we have. It's just something different. It's in the space that we come from, but it's different, and we're gonna change things. We're gonna make things. We're gonna be pioneers of what we do in this new venture, and I'm really excited because the other co-founder, she brings so much different stuff to the table as well as I do, and we come from two different arenas, and it's like two worlds coming together. But we've worked together for so many years, but we get to do it how we know what's right and what's best for the people. So we're really excited about this new venture that we're starting. So.
So if you can tell us what is the industry of the current company that you're starting up?
Well, well, I've never heard of anybody in it. We're kind of creating a new space called multi-dimensional marketing. It's MDM, and some people compare it to affiliate marketing or direct sales or multi-level marketing, whatever. There's a lot of names for this industry, but we're going to be different. We're doing things different. It's 2024. It's not 1984. I remember when my neighbor, she had an El Camino. She used to pay me and another neighbor to hang Avon little booklets on people's doors, and we would sit in the back of the El Camino with the box, and we would just run up to doors. We were young, and those were the good. Those days are nowadays it's different, right? There's social media, there's internet, there's all this stuff. So we're gonna change the game in that aspect also with helping people grow. And that's one of the biggest passions of mine and my other partner is growing as a person. Developing yourself because you can make all the money in the world, but money does two things to people. It makes a good person better or a bad person worse. It just exposes who you really are. And we want to build a company with leaders and people that grow and develop along the way, not just make a ton of money, do very well financially, but also grow and become healthy as well with products that we have, natural products and things that we're coming out with, which are going to be really amazing. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now. And as we grow, we also evolve. We're not those type of leaders where it's like, this is the way it goes, this is the way it is, and we're not changing for nobody. Those are like the dinosaurs, right? No, we know we need to evolve. I mean, look at Blockbuster Video, right? I mean, we know, I know we know what Blockbuster is, right? It was like,
Mhm.
you go there and be like, go there with your girlfriend or whoever and say, hey, what movie you want to watch? And they're like, no, I don't think we want to watch that movie. And then you go to the counter, and then the guy says, oh, you should watch this movie. And you're like, I told you to watch that movie. And then you're like, wait a minute, I didn't, but it's always that third party. So, companies like them, companies like, there's so many names out there that we could talk about that didn't evolve, and now they're dinosaurs or they're not here anymore. So.
Well, I love the how you're comparing personal development and even sort of personal health to productivity and success. I think we're seeing a trend here in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so as organizational health as a movement has gained traction where companies, especially publicly traded companies, big organizations, are no longer seeing health of the individual and the leader, especially mutually exclusive from success, productivity, market share, et cetera. And so that's very encouraging. Along those lines, so for the audience here of 25,000 subscribers, I want to let everybody know that Angel is. I learned after he and I were introduced and had a great conversation. I learned after that conversation, Angel, that you're a very modest person because in my little spiel, as you know, I try to introduce myself to people who don't know me and say, well, let me tell you why I'm a credible person. One of the things I bullet points I use in my quote unquote unfair advantage talk is that I had led a company that was a part of a couple of different private equity buyouts, and the final, when I was involved in the final M&A merger and acquisition, had a valuation of like $1.5 billion, somewhere in there. And so the person that introduced us, good mutual friend of ours, said later on, it's like, hey, it's interesting that you mentioned that because Angel has been a part of companies where he himself has produced $1.5 billion in sales. So if you don't mind telling me a little bit about that, if you can, because I think that, yeah, I think for whatever reason, a lot of people that are going to be watching this are going to be super interested in leadership, but also like, okay, that's great about leadership, but what about success? And again, I'm trying to prove that these things are not exclusive from each other.
Well, what we did is we had a big vision. I mean, when we started, we started in a company in 2007, and we got together and we had this big vision of what we're going to do. But it's great to be a visionary, right? But then you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan, and then you got to take action. Because a lot of people out there, it's like in a book I wrote. It's called the dreamer mindset, right? You dream, 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 but you don't apply action, nothing happens. So we created this plan, but the biggest thing that we had to create was a system. And it's the system is key. I mean, if you go to to a McDonald's, there's a Coke machine on the right, a fry machine on the left, and everywhere you go in the world, there's the same exact. They have it the same system, right? And Ray Kroc talks about it in his book. It's about systems, not just selling hamburgers, selling systems, right? And that's what we did. We we created a system, and it was a simple, duplicatable system that anybody could follow, that anybody can go out there and sell or promote what we were promoting, which is health products, natural products, right? At the time, I was in the tech business, technology, right? Telecom. And when I got into the new venture, I knew how important natural products were because that's what I wanted to take. That's what I didn't want to take supplements and pill popping, and there's all these side effects, and I never was in that arena before. So I had no experience in that. So what happened was when we started and we started getting these testimonials of like products working on people, because you can't make claims or anything on natural products. But when we saw what Mother Earth was doing to people, right, by taking certain supplements like blueberries and omega 3s and stuff like that, it was amazing. It was mind-boggling. I was like, oh my God, if we're getting these type of results in this short period of time with these products, we're gonna go we're gonna go crazy with this business, right? So that's what we did. We developed a system, and then we built it here in the US, and then we took it internationally, which 10x the business. And we were in 60 countries in a matter of a short, probably within the first, I think it was 6 or 7 years, we were in 60 countries, promoting these products and helping people earn income as well by doing it. And that's how we got to those kind of sales.
Well, tell me a little bit about your book, Bulletproof Mindset. This is not your only book, but this is the one that obviously we've talked a little bit about. Um, Sort of, I guess the overall theme of this book is all about having the right mental attitude. What do you think that most people don't get about having the right mental attitude, generally speaking?
Well, it's before I talk about the book, it's kind of crazy because I never thought I'd write a book in my life. Like I was not the book writer guy. I was not. I didn't even graduate high school. Like, and it's not. I just the only thing I like to read, and I wrote it in the book. And if anybody reads the book, I used to love anything to do with sports. I love sports, right? I mean, last night I was at the Dodger game with my family. We were at the game, and I love sports, and I would read anything sports related. So when I started reading some of the books that got recommended to me in the early days of the business, just so I could be better in business, I wanted to be a better leader, a better person in business. I thought those books were written just for me. And that's how good they were. I was like, are they talking about me? This is crazy. Like, I mean, they don't even know me. Yeah. So as I developed and as I became more successful, I had a lot more people ask me, "Hey, tell me about your story," or get on my podcast, or get on. Can you explain your story to us? I guess my story related with a lot of people, and it was interesting is that I was embarrassed of my story in a way, because I didn't go to college. I grew up in the ghetto. Like it wasn't like who wants to hear this story, right? Like I'm here and doing a training in Salt Lake City. I mean, who wants to hear about this guy from LA about that stuff? Let me talk about the business and all the other stuff about business. So people kept asking me, how did you become successful in business? How did you become successful at this? And I'm like, and I would think back and like think, like, oh, let me beat my chest and blah blah. It was me. No, it was my mindset. It was my mindset. It was because I look back and think about scenarios that I was in and how I don't know, God gifted me some talent. I don't know where this came from. It had to be because there was things and situations and scenarios I was put in as a young kid where I could have been in big trouble. And I use my mindset and to get out of certain situations, to not do things or do stuff that would harm me or my family. And that was always in my mind. Like it was always like, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I always noticed like, wait a minute, I'm always I can these are different types of mindsets. There's no one mindset, right? It's like there's one or two or different types of mindsets. So that's why when I wrote the book, the biggest thing is that people, they're just not aware of what mindset they're in. Because if they're aware, they can control the mind and change things. So it's like in the book I wrote about, there's like and I wrote about a mindset called an angry mindset. And it's like the one where, let's say you're tired, you went to bed late and your alarm's going off, and man, it's the worst sound, right? It's like, oh God, snooze, snooze, hit the button. You get up, you're already like, oh, you don't want to get up. And then you kick the dresser with your foot, right? And then guess what happened? You're in pain, your foot's hurting. You're like, it puts you in a bad state of mind, and it's like over and over. Like everything goes wrong, right? You get your car, you don't have gas. Oh, I gotta go to the gas station, or this happens, and it's like downhill from there. You have the worst. You're setting yourself up for the worst day possible, you know. But if you know what kind of mindset you're in, you can check yourself out of that immediately, right? You kick your foot, all right, whatever. Okay, you know what? Let me be grateful. Let me be in the gratitude mindset. Let me be grateful I'm alive, and I'm having the sun's out. It's a great day today. Let me flip the switch and take me in a different direction. So that's what this book is about, and that's why I wrote the book.
When it comes to mindset and leadership in business, this is something that, again, a lot of people try to learn leadership. A lot of people try to learn business ownership and business success from books or things that are practical. But what have you seen um, in the world of business and leading in business, the relationship to mindset? And is there something that a leader can do every single day to get into the right mindset so that they can succeed in their daily leadership?
Yes. I mean, they need to know they need to know what mindset they're in and how to be bulletproof. That's what I wrote about. I mean, really, I mean, if they're not aware, like Dion, like you said, I talked about Dion Sanders. He's aware of a moment, and he knows that the next moment is different. It's the same exact thing with the mindset. And one of the things you have to do every day as a leader is you have to sharpen your axe, which is you got to sharpen yourself. You got to grow. You got to read. You got to develop. You got to learn from other people. And And one of the biggest mindsets I think that most people, should have is having a gratitude mindset, being grateful that you are in a situation of leadership, right? Like you be grateful that, hey, I am leading some people here, and I got to learn how to become a better leader. So I got to go out and read, like you phrase, John Maxwell book, right? Like leadership books or stuff like that, to grow and develop myself, and read those books. I couldn't find a mindset book for myself. Like I couldn't find a mindset book. There wasn't a mindset book that I like mine. There was mindset books out there, but they were like, I don't know, they were just too corporate-y. I wrote this book, and maybe it should have been, uh, you know, it should be like for everybody, not just for business. It's a book written for everybody. Anybody can read it. It's a simple book. That's what I like to read. I like to read simple books, because the first book I read when I got into business was Who Moved My Cheese. And the reason I read that book was because it was small. I don't like big old Bible books, right? That's the biggest book I like is the Bible. That's it. I don't want to read a bigger books than that. I like, small, easy reads. I can read it quick, because I think sometimes in books, the chapter just repeats itself over and over just to make it a bigger book when they can really get to the point, right? I mean, now there's apps where you can purchase apps where it'll read a book for you right away. It like condenses the book in 30 minutes, which would mostly be like 4 hours. So that's why I wrote this book, to really condense it and really let people know where they are, where they need to be, because you don't just have one mindset. You have two or three mindsets, right? In a multiple days. Like right now, we could be in two different mindsets right now, right? And someone needs to be in this certain type of mindset to become successful in business, right? They need to be in a productive mindset, a producer mindset, where they have to go out there and produce and do the things it takes to become successful, right? Put themselves in that state of mind, not a lazy mindset, or angry, or other types of mindsets that are gonna not help them grow in business or be successful, but it's actually going to hurt them. So
I'd say too, the one thing that a lot of would-be leaders, people that aren't quite there yet, I don't know how many people start with what you've already said needs to happen. They don't take responsibility for their mindset. It's just like, well, this is what it is. This is my mindset. It's like, no, 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 no. You have to actually know what you're in, and you have to figure out what you need to be in. And it's really, to me, the leader's first responsibility. I mean, it's all about, one of my favorite John Maxwell books is The Self-Aware Leader. And I got to tell you, when I read that, I was like, wow. So maybe knowing yourself, and in the case of your book, knowing what mindset you're in is kind of job one, to be able to get where we want to go. And by the way, I'm glad you brought up John Maxwell, because when you and I spoke for the first time a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned him. Is there a favorite or most important lesson that comes from John Maxwell that has meant the most to you over the years?
John has been a big mentor of mine for many years. It's interesting is that I never got to meet John many years ago he was my mentor before he was my mentor, before I even shook his hand. Right. I'll never forget, he came to a convention. It was like 15,000 people in an arena. I forgot where we were at, Detroit, somewhere. And I'm sitting in the stands, nosebleed section. Here I am, a brand new entrepreneur, got my notebook out, and it was before cell iPhones, you can type the notes in, and here I am writing notes, and he's talking about leadership, and then he's mentioning a book called Failing Forward, and his other couple books he's read. And I mean, he's written, and he talked about failing forward, and I was like, hmm. And then he mentioned, and I even mentioned it in my book. He mentioned that how tall he was. Like if he fell on his face, that he would be that much closer to his goals and dreams of where he wanted to be. So I say I'm 5'9", and if I fall flat on my face, I'm 5'9" closer to where I want to be. That right there intrigued me
Mm.
to read the book. To like, wait a minute, I like that. I really like what he said. Like I'm gonna read. So I read the book, and I was like, wow, this book's amazing. I think John wrote about me. He don't even know me, but he wrote it about me because those when you feel like the book is connecting with you, you want to read it. You keep wanting to read the book, right? So when I learned that failure is not failure, failure is fertilizer, and if you learn from it and you grow from it, it's the best thing ever. Because we're taught as kids, if you get an F on your, at school, it's bad. You'll fail. It's you fail. And if I brought an F home, my dad's old school. I don't think you could spank kids nowadays or whatever, but you couldn't bring those kind of grades home, in my household. So it was like that was bad. But when in life, in business, if you learn from it and you grow from it, it's the best thing ever. And I was like, wow, because when I got kicked out of high school, I did good in school. I had great grades. I played baseball. I was doing great things. And then I got in trouble, hanging around with the wrong crowd, got expelled from school because we did some stupid stuff. And then I felt like I let my parents I was a failure. I felt like I failed. And I always had this chip on my shoulder, like I failed. I let my family down. They sacrificed so much for me, and I let them down. And so when I got into this business venture, because I did carpentry work as we talked about. I was a maker, architectural woodworking, which we both uh
Mm-hmm.
we both did, which was a great. I'll give it was a great training ground for me. It molded me to grow up fast. But when I got into business, it was an opportunity for me to show people, especially my parents, my family, my grandparents, that I wasn't a failure. And that book, Failing Forward by John Maxwell, I even told him about this. I did a project with him. I mean, what fast forward now, but I've got to know John. I've got to do projects with John. I got to go to a Braves game with John Maxwell. I mean, it's amazing. It's like I got to pinch myself, to go from seeing him in the nosebleed section to be able to do projects with him is pretty amazing. So
Yeah, it's so refreshing too. Like when we we live in a day and time where for decades now, the term, the phrase failure is not an option rings in everybody's ears. And yet you have John Maxwell that said, hey, fail forward. I'm that much closer. You mentioned getting kicked out of high school and not being able to finish. You mentioned getting into woodworking, and you shared your story with me a couple weeks ago, and it was absolutely fascinating. Yeah, we do have a lot in common as far as what we were doing at about the same age, generally speaking. And curious if you could just tell me some more of that story, starting with when you got kicked out of high school, what you were planning to do at the time, and kind of all of that leading to this seminal moment where you are hanging doors, and it was kind of at a hotel, and it was a point of no return for you, because to me this is yeah, everybody's going to want to hear this.
well, yeah, I wasn't the best kid growing well when in high school. It started in high school. Started chasing the girls and doing the party, hanging out and doing, having fun. I lived the life too early, And I also became a father at 16 years old. So if you know kids out there like me, there's hope. Okay, I'll be more than happy to talk to them for you if you can get a hold of me. And I laugh about it now, but back then it was no joke. My dad was really upset. My dad was, he was like, I'm not raising another kid. Like what you're gonna go to work. So my father knew one of a my father was a union representative for the cabinet makers union in Los Angeles in Southern California, and he knew obviously he had connections with he knew a lot of places to work for. So my father knew of a company. It was called Northwestern Showcase. It was a company in LA, and he knew the owner, and he also knew the foreman there, which was he was an old school Sicilian, like a mob boss, like like he was straight from Sicily, hardcore, just mean Sicilian. And my dad's like, yes, I'm gonna put my son to work there. I think he did it on purpose. He wanted me to really get tortured and really learn how to really build a business. And everybody that worked there was like old school from Europe, like they were from England, from Germany. They were all, I mean, amazing craftsmen, right? And my dad knew that, so he wanted me to go. If I'm gonna be in the trades, you might as well go work with the best people. So he got me a job there. I started working at 16 years old. I started working full time, and it was architectural woodworking, they call it. And we would build mostly the Vegas casinos, like the Bellagio, the Venetian, all those casinos that were built at those times. We built all the woodworking. We would build in LA. We would build it in like that in the shop, tear it all down, ship it off to Vegas, and they would install it. All the stuff from all the fancy molding, whatever you could think of, bar, all the woodworking. And I learned a lot. I also went to it's called LA Trade Tech. It was associated with the union and the whole the job. So I was an apprentice. So I had to every time I graduated semester, I would get a raise until I became what's called a journeyman. And I became a journeyman at 20, I think what 19 or 20 years old. So, I'm making top dollar. The top dollar in construction, construction is like it's like a catch 22. They can hook you real quick with good money real quick, right? But then it stays that way for a long time unless you become a contractor. So I started making good money. And then I was like, I hit a plateau. So at 20 years old, I was making, for my age at the time in with the 90s, whatever it was, I started making good money. So I bought a house at 20 years old in a city called Northridge, California. So, here I was 20 years old, I had a nice truck, I had a nice new home, but I was broke at a higher level. And I was just working to pay my bills. And I was like, God, I got to do something different. Right. So, anyways, make a long story short, we were working at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And I was working, I had an apprentice with me, and we were hanging these doors, and they were doing this it's called gold leafing. It's like special gold that goes on these handles and around the door. And we were installing these nice fancy doors, whatever. But it was interesting is that they had security watching us. And I was like, this is crazy. I told the apprentice, I go, why is security watching us for? I go, it's like we're prisoners. Like what are we gonna steal? This big door, run out the front door with a big door, like down Sunset Boulevard? Like what? I mean, this is. I was like, this is. At that moment, I was like, you know what? I told the apprentice, I go, man, I shouldn't be working here. I should be staying at this hotel. This is. I got to find something different. And long and behold, he told me, hey man, I met a guy. He's in this telecom business. He's about our age. He lives in the Hollywood Hills. I mean, I don't know how it works, but you can make money, and he's willing to help people and train people. And I was like, well, who is he? How do I meet this guy? And I'm telling you, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear, right? It's like you couldn't say the wrong thing to me at that time because I was looking for something. And he ended up introducing me to this fella, when it becoming my mentor, and the rest is history. This guy mentored me. At the time, it was telecom. It's the same arena as what I do now, but it was in telecom, and I just went to the next level. I was like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Show me how to do this business. Mentor. That's why I learned about all the books, and I started growing as a leader. And I ended up walking away from the cabinet making world, and I've been doing this for 20 since I went full time August 2001. So I've been doing this kind of business since then. So it's been a long time. Yeah.
Wow, 23 years. Yeah, you're right.
So
There is a plateau that you inevitably reach in woodworking and cabinet making, unless you own a business and everybody else is doing the work for you. But yeah, and it's interesting though that you recognize that at such a young age too, and it was a matter of, hey, I'm willing to give this other thing a shot. My guess is too, because I've had this conversation with people here lately, and this kind of weaves together several things that you've mentioned, which is when it comes to great leadership, a lot of people think, first of all, leadership has a lot of different definitions. I mean, John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. If you ask 50 different people, they'll all have not just slightly distinct definitions, but very different, like, oh, I never thought of it that way kind of thing. And one of the things that I have noticed, though, is that there is a common denominator amongst all of the leaders that I have known or known of or watched or observed or studied that have had significant and long-term achievement and have made progress and so forth. And this is something I just recently discovered, and that is they're all really good at building capacity for even better leadership. So it's not just, okay, they made some decisions, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or they did this great thing 5 years ago that's gotten them where they need to go. But it's like they're always looking to how can I build capacity to be able to do more? Not necessarily to just do more, but how do I build capacity for it? Which is why some of the better leaders are great at building a network. They're great at building a team. They're great at then getting their network and team to build other networks and teams, right? It's like it is the one thing I've noticed that the super successful people do. And I just based on the way you told, sort of that origin story, I can tell that you saw some semblance of that early on, which is why you thought nothing about getting out of the woodworking industry and into more of the telecom and the network marketing stuff. One thing I want to share too is that, and this is kind of what got a laugh with our mutual friend here recently, is that the book. So the book that I wrote and released last September, it's called Make Work Better, and it's all about workplace culture, workplace health, leadership development, and the relationship to what people are naturally gifted at doing and how productive or how successful the business is that employs them, generally speaking. And I've got a lot of little tactical things in there. The next book that I'm going to be writing, tentative release date is September 25th, 2024. So, like literally, 5, 6 months from now, is going to be about generations like yours and mine, the Gen X generation, and even to a degree, but a lesser degree, the baby boomer generation, developing millennial leaders. Because the one trend that I've noticed across workplaces, especially in this country, maybe only in this country, but especially in this country, is that a lot of quote unquote middle management is now being staffed by more and more millennials. And I'm good friends with Tim Elmore, who's written some books about leadership, and his expertise is like developing the next generation and generational diversity in the workplace. According to his book and other sources, millennials are now the most represented generation in the workforce, which I guess makes sense. I mean, the youngest Gen Xers would probably be about maybe 40, and the oldest ones would be 62-ish, something like that. So yeah, there are a lot of, 20, I guess, um, millennials would start at 25, 26, going up to, like I said, 39. But the thing that I have noticed, so this also goes back to something you were sharing earlier when you mentioned that when you started off in woodworking, working in the wood workshop, that a lot of these were old, crusty guys, a generation removed from you, old school and everything else. And that was pretty much my story for probably the first 15 years of my, professional life. I was one or two in my generation, and it was like everybody else was a baby boomer. And then there was a switch that happened probably about 2015-ish or so, 20 to 2018, as I started moving around and going into different contexts. I found that like I was getting put with people and said, okay, here's who I want you to work with. And it was a millennial. And it's like, it was kind of like, what are you doing here? Oh, what are you doing here? Kind of thing. It was just interesting because I felt like I was forced to quote unquote compete with millennials for whether it be the same work, the same accounts, whatever. And so my mindset for the last, like I said, probably 5, 6, 7 years has been a competing mindset towards millennials and other succeeding generations. Like there's Gen Z obviously in the workplace now, and I've worked with some of those. My mindset has shifted, however, to where I think I'm wasting my energy trying to compete with millennials and sort of these sort of middle management kind of things. And I really am burdened to start coaching and developing millennial leaders. But again, a lot of them, many of them, the vast majority that you would consider leaders are in sort of that middle management. And we've heard speakers, authors, all kinds of folks talk about, man, these millennials sure are different. They don't have these particular 5 or 6, key characteristics that preceding generations had that are predictable, that we know. It's like we're having to deal with this now. We're having to deal with that, and no millennials want to go into work. They all want to be, all the stuff that we hear. And what I'm curious is, as you have, because obviously you do work with millennials. We in fact, again, our mutual friend is a millennial. But as you're thinking about the people that are again 15 years younger than us, and maybe many of them or more, and many of them are stuck in middle management. And they're like, what is this leadership thing? What is this, owning a business thing? Like, what would be like your number one piece of advice for again people from that generation who they're still trying to get used to working in general, but they're going to listen to your story and they're going to say, wow, if he did this at 20 years of age, why am I not doing this at 30 years of age? What would be your number one piece of advice for that generation specifically if they want to start to be serious about real leadership, entrepreneurship, and particularly starting their own business?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I actually have a millennial and a what is it, Gen Z or Gen X, the next one after that.
A Z, yeah,
Oh,
because you and I are X, so yeah.
we're X, right? So I have a
Yep.
millennial and a Z. So I actually have two kids in that industry, in that arena. So it's a they're different. They are different. Um, we come from we were like the tail end of the old school. I'll give an example. I told you this the other day, and when I used to do woodworking, I would build stuff. I'd have my setup, my shop, my wood, my whole table, all my tools, whatever, and I would build something. And if it was something was wrong or whatever, my Sicilian boss, we call him my boss, but he's the boss, right? Would come and like he would be pit, like he would lose it, like, and he would literally take the what I built and throw it on the ground and break it. And I can't see that happening in this day and age without or somebody might get on camera or something. They'll go viral, like so. I just think, and for me, like I look at it now and I can laugh about it, Will, because it was like, oh, it made me do a better job the next time. Like I made sure that, whatever was wrong wasn't wrong. And I think for the millennials, they have I think generations always want the next generation to be better. And we don't want to do the bad things that were done to us to our next generation. So, I don't, I hate, and I don't like to say that word either, but I don't like to always say like, oh, they're softer, they're not built like us, or we can't. It's hard to say that, because not everyone's the same, but they, it's a different approach to the next generation. It's all about communication, and it's all about what are they good at, what are they good with, what are they good at, and you got and the principles are the principles. You look, if you in business, the business principles are the same. I don't care where you are, where you are. You got to be in a business mindset. You got to be in business. You got to be a leader. You got to be a problem solver. You got to sacrifice. You got to do all these things, right? There's all these things that you have to do if you want to be successful in business, right? And you have to know that to know that stuff. And I don't. It doesn't matter what age you are. You're gonna have to do those things. They just have a way. Nowadays they can start a business and be on the internet and be remote somewhere where back in our days it wasn't like that. We had to physically be in an area and do business, right? So I mean, yeah, technology has helped them do things differently, but at the end of the day, business is business, because you could be remote, you could be do this, you could do that, but you're going to have ups and downs, you're going to have problems, you're going to have growing pains. All these things are going to happen to you. And with the new generations, they have a lot of access to more things, like, even to, hey, I'm they Google stuff, right? And now and I tell people, look, you can Google stuff, but the source you're getting the Google stuff from, the information from, how do you know that stuff, that information is correct or where it's coming from? So that's why it's always really important to have a mentor, a coach, a mentor, someone who is going to teach you those principles and help you in a way of what you're good at and how you do things. Because I have a 30-year-old and I have a 25-year-old, right? And then I have a 13-year-old that's going on 25, right? Like she's that's my gap of kids. That's the age group there. And I talk about it. My oldest went to Stanford University, and I never went to college. I went to trade school, and he's in a whole, you know, tech industry, which is amazing. And to see what he's done and travel the world and do everything remote, and it's like, wow, it's pretty amazing to see what he's been able to do with his life after school and this new world, right? But I think us, our age group, we need to adapt, and we need to learn this stuff. I always say, you got to know a little bit about a lot. And one of the things that people always tell me is, they say, Angel, you're such a good chameleon. Like, you can relate with anybody. Like, you can relate with the CEO, the Fortune 500 guy, or the guy that just got, was homeless, or guy got kicked out of high school, the construction worker guy, or whatever. And I say, well, because I've always learned to learn a little bit about a lot. I know I like to be in the know, right? To know just about, I know about the stock market, right? I know about NFTs, or coin, Bitcoin, or these industries, or these things that are coming up, and all these things that just to know stuff, just to relate with people. And once you understand them in our age group, once you understand how they think and how they are, then you'll know how to lead them, and you'll know how to give them advice on what to do and how to do things. But if we try to, what I learned with this next generation, the next two generations, you can't be like, this is the way it is. This is how it's going to be. Like we were like that. They told us, back in our days, hey, this is how it goes. If not, get out, right? It's not like that anymore. Because it's just a different day and age. And I think they have a producer mindset along with a business mindset. And if they can learn it earlier enough, what one thing I've learned about the new generations is that they're not in a rush. Like, it seems like they're not in the rush of, they don't even care to buy a house nowadays. Like, I know some that don't even buy a car. Like, they'll Uber around and do those things, so, but I do believe in things coming back full circle. And I do believe there's going to be a time where belly to belly, face to face is going to be a big thing, and it's going to come back around. And those millennials and those next generations, they're going to wish they've known, or some that do know this stuff are going to be excelling in another level, because belly to belly, face to face, I mean, that's the shaking hands, looking at somebody. There's nothing that can replace that. You can have the internet and do all the stuff, but that right there that's a human connection, that's very priceless. And it creates loyalty, a bond with somebody, especially in the business world, where you have corporate people, management people, good leaders that are in your business or your team. And if you build that culture, you know, through belly to belly, we're doing it together. Hand, you remember when your old boss put their hand over you, a good job, you're like, wow, you felt great. You can't do that on Zoom or technology. So I believe that's going to come back around. Maybe not to the full extent, but it is going to come back around where people are going to need that. Hey, the attaboy, like good job, or high five, or whatever the case is.
Just a personal question. Right as it stands right now, what excites you most about the future?
Well, what excites me most about the future is it's just there's so many exciting things happening. I mean, we live in a world now where it's like this world is going quick. Everything's evolving. It's tech. I like technology. I like it. I may not know how to do all the technology stuff, but I like it. Best Buy is one of my favorite places to go to. You get me. It's like sporting goods, Dick's Sporting Goods, or Best Buy. These two places are like my places, right? So, but I just like the future of what's happening, technology. I just wish there was more, like I said, some of the old principles, come back sooner and integrated into the new of what's going on. But I think the future The future is the unknown and we don't know, but it's exciting. And I like that. And I like, you see it evolving every day. As far as my future, I'm excited. I'm excited what we're doing. Because I know where we're going and I could see where we're going in the business that we just created. So I'm excited about that. You know, I mean, there's a lot of other things. I'm just grateful to be here with you, Will, and inviting me on the show, and this is great. Because I just like to share whatever I can share with people and whatever I can do to help people with my story or my experiences is what led me to even do these kind of things or write a book or be on a podcast. That's because I wasn't that guy. I wasn't that guy. So, and if I wasn't that guy, and I can be that person now, I am that person. Anybody can do that. Because I believe that everybody has a story that needs to be heard or needs to be told, and there's somebody out there, waiting for that story, and then that story can propel their future. Because you never know.
Awesome. I'm going
And,
to put
and
up on the screen one more time your book, Bulletproof Mindset.